as I think about this whole age of AI, humanity is so important here because another key theme beyond the idea of change and transformation, the human transformation, it's also the human experience. We are experience makers, and your experience has been different than my experience, different than this peer or colleague's experience, but we're able to have conversations and then connect around those experiences to create new possibilities, new potential going forward. It's interesting to note that on the homepage of your website, you have a quote from Sports Illustrated, and it states, and I'm going to quote this: an amazing 78% of NFL players find themselves bankrupt or financially stressed within 2 years of retirement, and 60% of NBA players are broke within 5 years of walking off the court. Why is that?
Beautiful question. And that has been, I guess, trying to get to an answer towards that has been what has fueled me in this transition. There's no one silver bullet. There's no one thing that causes that financial and lifestyle disruption to elite athletes at the end of the game. One of the key reasons that happens is poor planning. Mm. And that poor planning comes down to asking those questions on, well, what is it that you want your life to be like after you finish this sporting career? And one of the reasons that question is well, if it's asked, the reason why it's very rarely answered is, don't ruin my dream. I'm living in this moment right now. I'm less than one. I'm 0.1 in a million of individuals who are getting to experience this high of winning an Olympic gold medal, of playing pro basketball, whatever. This is my moment. It might only last a year. It might last 3. If I'm lucky, it's 10. But don't ruin it by asking me, what am I going to do at the end of my dream? And because of that, so many athletes don't get that plan. They don't get to think beyond living in exactly what they're doing right now.
Yeah. And I think that's where you are speaking a lot of truth from your own personal experience, from your own personal growth, because you made the transition from professional athlete to 2 decades in banking to now seeing a completely new opportunity to help even more people through your shared experience at scale. It makes me think about a banker here in the United States that I just had on the podcast, Jill Castilla. She's a CEO of Citizens Bank of Edmond out of Oklahoma. And they just launched a niche neo brand called Roger for the military community, because as a recruit herself, she came from a impoverished background, and the only way for her to go to college was to go into the U.S. military. Well, she went to the U.S. military, but she was defrauded of income from a relative. So she took that painful experience and then transformed that into the ability to provide power or opportunity for someone else. Thinking about your own journey of change and transformation, what's been a challenge that you've had to work through along the way to get from professional football player to working in banking to now founder and CEO?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of asking the question. What's been the biggest challenge or struggle for me as I've gone through this journey? You know, one of my traits, as many have told me, and probably annoys my wife to no end, is my sense of optimism that I bring to what I bring to what I do. And I think therefore it's difficult for me to say what has there been a continuous challenge or struggle that has gone through that, mainly because I think with what I love doing, I'm comfortable finding a way. I'm comfortable recognizing that I will find how my role plays within this broader ecosystem and this broader team. So I think the challenging bit for me at the moment is, or has been, pushing when people don't want my help, right? So in banking, I remember certainly when I was global head of mortgage at HSBC, and my role was essentially to go and figure out why is HSBC in mortgages across all of these different countries? What's the thing that pulls it together, that ties it together? And I would go into markets, I would sit down and pull together round tables of our team of externals, which was something new at the time to do that. And I would say, hey, I'm asking these questions to build things out. And they'd be like, well, we don't need that. We just sell mortgages. We just put the rate and we push it. And that's basically what we do. And that was really hard for me to deal with along this view of, but you're not solving the problem of the people you're trying to solve. You're limiting how far you can get. You'll probably get more success if we work together. And getting back on the plane or leaving that door, that's always been something difficult for me to deal with because I'm not a forceful player. I'm team, let's do this together. If you do that bit well, I can do this, and we can all win. So it was really challenging for me to be in that situation. And I face that today when I speak to not necessarily the athletes, but certainly the clubs associations, when they're like, no, we don't need help. They're fine. We have this catch-all. Some of them will fall through, but we'll be okay. And but if we work together, we could probably do something even better. And, so that's the challenge.
You're hitting me right here in the heart, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel that pain, because I think about the work that I've been doing with financial services leaders. It's like you see something, you see a potential opportunity, or you see a roadblock, but the roadblock, back to the point of your experience, the roadblock it's not an obstacle. This is Stoic wisdom here. This is Marcus Aurelius. This is Ryan Holiday, who wrote the book, The Obstacle is the Way. The roadblock is the way forward. But then I'm struggling with this myself, and I've had some conversations with my team and my wife of, how do you help those who don't want to help themselves? Because it's a frustrating place to be, because you're coming at it with a heart of, you just care. But I'll never forget that his name is David C. Baker, and he's advised me a couple of times over the years. He wrote a great book, by the way, called The Business of Expertise. But David said, a lot of times you're probably going to care more than what others care, because you just see things different. So I think it boils down to a matter of perspective. Yeah. And if you think about, there are 4 stages, if you will, 4 steps for what I call human transformation. And I'm writing about this in my second book, Banking on Change. Step number 1 is where you see things different. And you see things different in a lot of ways. It could be experience. We'll just call it education. But education can be gained a lot of ways. Experience, it could be a podcast. It could be a video. It could be reading something. It could be a conversation. It could be attending a conference or an event. But you're always, if you're open, if you have an open mind, a growth mindset, you probably are going to go through life and see things differently than what you saw before. I mean, I'm seeing things differently even through this conversation. And that's one of the reasons I just get such joy out of doing this, because I'm learning as much as everyone else is. And when you see different, you're going to think different. And then I ask financial brand leaders, I say, okay, well, what happens next? When you see different, you think different, what's the next logical step? And they say, well, I'm going to act different. I'm going to be different. I'm going to do different. I'm like, no, you're not. They're like, well, how come? I was like, things that you need to do right now different, but you're making either a conscious or more likely a subconscious choice, an unconscious choice to not take action. And they go, I've never thought about it that way. And so to bridge the gap between the thought and the action comes down to one thing. It's the feeling. It's emotion. The desire, the feeling, the emotion to take the action, to do different or to be different, has to be greater, sometimes exponentially greater, than the desire or the action just to remain the same.